What if I told you that the Ben 10 sequel you grew up with completely erased a much darker, far more brutal timeline that we were actually promised? In my last video about the classic art style, a lot of you guys pointed out in the comments that the sudden design shifts and flashback retcons make the original series feel like a completely different reality. And visually, you're totally right. But behind the scenes, it runs way deeper than just an art style change. In 2008, Ben 10, Alien Force changed everything. It gave us a mature Ben, a reformed Kevin Levin, and a completely recalibrated Omnitrix. It was great, but it wasn't what the original creators, Man of Action, actually planned. Before Cartoon Network handed the keys of the franchise over to late animation legend Dwayne McDuffie, the original team, composed of veteran Marvel and DC comic writers, had a definitive, gritty roadmap bridging the gap between 10-year-old Ben and the cold, unyielding hero of heroes, Ben 10,000. We're talking about a timeline where Kevin 11 never gets redeemed, how Dr. Animo becomes a literal head in a jar, and Grandpa Max loses his arm in a horrifying alien war, and many more. So smash that subscribe button, unlock your Omnitrix, and let's explore the Dark Ben 10 sequel we never got to see. To understand this unmade sequel, we have to look at the true intended ending of the classic 2005 series, the episode titled Goodbye and Good Riddance. In official canon, this episode is considered an alternate universe or non-canon, but behind the scenes, this was Man of Action's literal send-off to their world. Cartoon Network actually marketed it as a lost episode because production on Alien Force was already overlapping. In this original vision, Ben's identity is permanently exposed to the entire world after a catastrophic final battle that leaves Vilgax completely shattered. Instead of Ben taking off the Omnitrix for 5 years like he did in Alien Force, the original plan kept the watch firmly on his wrist. Because his literal home address was now public knowledge, Ben and the Tennyson family became massive, famous targets overnight. This meant 11-year-old Ben couldn't just be a kid anymore. He had to instantly balance his messy, ego-driven childhood with 24/7 real-world superheroics. Because Ben's identity was public, his rogues gallery didn't just fight him at random anymore. They targeted his loved ones directly at home, and 2 villains in particular were set to push Ben to his absolute psychological breaking point. First up, Kevin 11. Forget the car-loving anti-hero boyfriend from Alien Force. In the original Man of Action continuity, there was no redemption arc in sight. Kevin was a monster inside and out, a vindictive, psychotic kid looking for total retribution against a world he still felt wronged him. According to original pop-up trivia and creator notes, Kevin would escape the null void repeatedly over the next decade. He didn't get massive new mutations. Instead, he mastered his base powers and used them like a weaponized stalker, constantly striking at Ben's family. We only see a massive new transformation of future Kevin 11,000 in Ken 10 episode. The pop-up trivia episode reveals that Devlin, Kevin's son, doesn't have the absorbing powers like Kevin. He only had inherited the mutated DNA we used to see in classic series. It also reveals that in one of the null void escapes to exact revenge on Ben, Kevin actually flees Earth entirely, hiding out in a human colony on Saturn, which is where Devlin is born. Then we have Dr. Animo. In his desperate, mad quest to defeat Ben, Animo attempts to artificially recreate Kevin's original mutation on his own body. The experiment goes horribly wrong, gravely damaging his physical form. He literally becomes a severed head hoisted around by a giant mechanical cybernetic body. Dealing with a psychotic stalker and a literal body horror mad scientist before he even turned 15 is exactly why Ben's personality began to freeze over, transforming him into the joyless workaholic we see in the future. But the true turning point of this entire unmade timeline happens in the year 2017, when Ben is 22 years old. Enter the Limax Wars. You might remember the Limax as the creepy, gelatinous body snatchers from a single episode in season 1 of the original series. They love eating the elderly and can perfectly shapeshift into human beings. In the original timeline, this wasn't a one-and-done episode. It was a massive, multi-year global war. The Limax infiltrate the highest echelons of the Earth's government, creating an atmosphere of total paranoia and body-snatching terror. It's during this brutal, bloody war that Grandpa Max suffers a catastrophic casualty, losing his arm in battle. He's forced to replace it with a massive, high-tech, multi-purpose plumber laser cannon. The Alien Force makers smartly reused this unmade concept and created a new, different arc, the Hybrid Invasion. yellow slimy aliens, abducting humans and shapeshifting to invade. But here Grandpa Max does not lose his arm during the hybrid arc in Alien Force. Instead, he temporarily disappears after sacrificing himself in the episode Max Out, where he detonates a makeshift bomb, but he later returns completely uninjured. But the original version was darker. Losing Max's arm in this event ruins Ben psychologically. Ben loves his family, and throughout the classic series, whenever Max or Gwen were in danger, Ben would aggressively abuse his alien forms as an outlet to conquer his fear and trauma. The original creators heavily implied that during the Limax Wars, the Omnitrix likely timed out at a critical moment, leading to Max getting severely hurt. Blaming himself, Ben makes a terrifying vow: master the watch, unlock master control, and never step out of alien form again so no one he loves ever suffers on his watch. This is the exact reason why Ben 10,000 abandons his human identity entirely and patrols the Earth 24/7 as XLR8 or Stinkfly. He was running away from his own human vulnerability. And if you want definitive proof of just how ruthless, cold, and uncompromising Ben became after these events, you only have to look at his trophy room. Have you ever really wondered why Vilgax's actual remains are kept as a trophy in a stasis pod in the original Ben 10,000 timeline? Think about how devastating, bloody, and absolute that final encounter with Vilgax must have been. During his 20s, Ben Tennyson grew incredibly strict, cynical, and stopped pulling his punches. In a definitive, brutal battle against his arch-nemesis, Ben went completely feral and mutilated Vilgax, tearing his limbs apart and reducing his body to fragments to stop him once and for all. Okay, so let's talk about how would Ben's powers have actually evolved. In Alien Force, the Omnitrix recalibrated to give Ben an entirely new playlist. Man of Action didn't have that mechanic in mind. In their timeline, Ben never takes the watch off. To get a new alien, he had to manually use the watch's capture mode or wait for internal evolutionary safeguards to lift as he matured. Over a 20-year window, he would gradually unlock exactly 9,979 new transformations. But here's the coolest part: there were no ultimate forms. Instead of an Ultimatrix evolving alien DNA through a combat simulation, adult Ben utilized nanotechnology modification. Think back to the classic series. The only major nanotech belongs to galvanic mechamorphs, aka Upgrade. Using his unmatched mastery of the watch, Ben figured out how to permanently fuse the nano properties of Upgrade into his other alien forms, literally upgrading their baseline physiology. The nanotechnology was often integrated directly into the aliens' clothing, granting them specialized defensive layers and mechanical utility depending on the form. For example, crystalline aliens like Diamond Head were granted heightened durability, faster crystal generation, and better shape control. XLR8 had a built-in high-tech visor. Nanotechnology embedded in the transformation allowed him to scan and analyze targets on the fly. Heat Blast reinforced with hyper-advanced cybernetic nanotechnology to boost his firepower. This insane level of power eventually allowed Ben to build Omnitrix City over Mount Rushmore, turning Earth into a galactic hub where he ruled as the ultimate universal peacekeeper, walking among thousands of alien species as one of their own. When you string all these pieces of original pop-up trivia, comic book arcs, and scrapped concepts together, you get a sequel series that feels less like a Saturday morning show and more like an epic, high-stakes comic book run. While the official timeline we got from Dwayne McDuffie and Omniverse gave us some of the best moments in animation history, I will always wonder how mind-blowing a true, uninterrupted Man of Action sequel would have been. Warner Brothers still has a chance to make it happen. We still don't know what happened to Ben and other characters after Omniverse, how Ben ended up as Ben 10,000. They can make the Ben 10 Hero Generation as a movie or new show and use the unmade concept they originally planned with artists who can make classic art style, which will fill the gap between Omniverse Ben and future Ben 10,000. Then, finally, a Ken 10 show like Invincible and Batman Beyond, featuring Ben 10,000 and his Rogues Gallery in future would be cherry on top. But what do you think? Do you prefer the Alien Force timeline we got, or do you wish we got this darker, cybernetic Limax Wars storyline? Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and if you want to see how Ben Tennyson become Ben 10 million and started multiversal war against Batman in the future, click the video on your screen right now. See you next time!